Hello. Men. We don't like taking advice from anybody. Whether it be your wife asking you to stop at a gas station for directions or your children begging you to stop embarrassing them. We don't like listening to anybody. But what if some of the advice that was given to you was, you better watch out or that may kill you? The life of a middle-aged man is filled with many challenges. One of those such challenges is a disease by the name of hypertension, which has been called the silent killer. During this presentation, I'd like to focus on three main points. Number one, the costs and the prevalence related to hypertension, the statistics and the amount of people that are affected by hypertension. Number two, I'd like to discuss the dangers and risks posed by hypertension and the damage it does to the human body. And number three, lastly, I'd like to focus on ways we can combat this disease and equip ourselves with the education that's now available on hypertension. So for starters, hypertension is a word that's commonly ignored. People think that they could just brush it under the rug and take some medications and it'll be forgotten. So that's not the case, gentlemen. I would like to start by defining the word hypertension. Merriam-Webster Dictionary, with no date, defines the word hypertension, defines hypertension as a systolic blood pressure of 140 millimeters hemoglobin. Millimeters hemoglobin, for the record, is a measurement designed to measure pressure over a diastolic blood pressure of 90 millimeters hemoglobin. Systolic blood pressure is when the heart's working and at pumping, and diastolic is when the heart's at rest. So 140 over 90 is classified as hypertension. On a side note, the Center for Disease Control tells us, with no date once again, that 1 in 3 adult Americans, that's approximately 70 million adults, have hypertension. Hypertension costs, and the burden on the U.S. health system costs $46 billion per year in A, doctor's visits, B, medications, and C, missed work days. So $46 billion a year, hypertension is costing the American economy. Number two, hypertension is the number one disease killer. It's heart disease is the number one killer, but hypertension is a primary factor in that heart disease. So the Center for Disease Control once again tells us that 1,000 deaths per day in the year 2013, that's 360,000 deaths in 2013, were attributed to hypertension being a primary contributing factor. Hypertension does not discriminate. Men, women, all ages and all races are affected by hypertension. But once you get to the ages of 45 to 64 in men, you see a spike in hypertension. And I have here made this graph, and if you could see that, let's see. At the ages of, there's the men in black and the women are in red, but in the ages of 45 to 64, you see a spike in men's hypertension going up. The source here is the British Journal of Cardiology, but the numbers are comparable to the United States. Assuming all that information wasn't enough to scare you, let's talk about the damage and the havoc that hypertension wreaks on the individual's body. For starters, the Mayo Clinic tells us that non-modifiable risk factors, which is an individual's age, race, and family history, are things you can't change. So the damage that is posed on the human body includes damage to all organs due to the extreme pressure on the artery walls. Hypertension causes MIs, which are myocardial infarctions, aka heart attacks. It also causes stroke and aneurysms in many cases. Hypertension also affects the vessels and weakens and constricts the vessels going to the kidneys, and of course the kidneys are there to filter out impurities from the blood. So it affects the kidneys, the brain, every major organ in the body. And let's not think of even some of the smaller things. It affects the eyes. Hypertensive people are also at a higher risk to get diabetes. Let's not fall victim to the myth, men, that hypertension will have symptoms. According to the American Heart Association, the AHA, hypertension is generally symptomless, aka, like I've mentioned before, the silent killer. So don't be looking for excessive sweating or facial flushing or trouble sleeping. The silent killer is the name for hypertension. So, what's a man to do? Once again, the go-to standard, the Mayo Clinic, with no date here, has given us a list and compiled some suggestions for the modifiable risk factors. And modifiable, unlike non-modifiable, are the risk factors you can control. So let me run down the list for you. Number 1, lose weight. Men, we're not talking about dropping 60 pounds in a month, but what I would suggest is set small goals of 5 pounds, do that in a month. Next month, 5 again, move from there. We're also told that men with a waistline of 40 inches or more are at a higher risk for hypertension. Again, according to the Mayo Clinic, this whole list is according to the Mayo Clinic, but I will say that number 2 is exercise more regularly. Don't push yourself to the limit. Let's talk about walking, light weights, cardiovascular stuff, treadmills, that sort of thing. Even swimming's fantastic. Number 3, alcohol. I would suggest abstaining completely from alcohol, but if you do drink alcohol, and that's your choice, of course, I would keep it to maybe very moderate drinking, maybe 1 a day at maximum. Number 4, eat healthy. Fast foods, McDonald's, not to name any particular organizations, but let's throw them out the window. Let's talk about increasing your fruits, vegetables, whole grains. Number 5, lower the caffeine. This is a tough one for me. Anything more than 2 cups of caffeine, coffee a day, is trouble for your blood pressure. It can increase your blood pressure. Number 6, lower the salt. Stop shaking the salt shaker, my friends. Processed food, cut back. Canned goods, cut back. They're very high in sodium, which raises blood pressure. Number 7, this is a no-brainer. Quit smoking. Smoking has been ravaging American bodies for hundreds of years, so men, no excuse here, quit smoking. Number 8, this is a practical one I never really thought about before, but I thought it was very interesting. Monitor your blood pressure from home. These devices that you could buy now are affordable, and the benefit is that they can, you would know your baseline, and you would know if you're at risk for a hypertensive crisis. That's a systolic blood pressure of over 190, 180, around there. And you can let your doctor know about any changes. Number 9, lower your stress. Easier said than done, of course. There's lots of ways to lower stress. For starters, don't sweat the small stuff. Once again, I will say, easier said than done. Rely on the power of prayer. Get a hobby, deep breathing techniques, whatever helps you individually. And lastly, but not leastly, number 10, get a support system. Wives, daughters, friends, sons. Let them know that they can help you. They might encourage you not to have that last piece of steak. They may encourage you to cut back on the cheesecake, or encourage you at the gym to take another extra 10 minutes on that treadmill. So, men, those are some pretty practical ways on how to lower your blood pressure if you do have high blood pressure, and also try to avoid getting hypertension if you do have it, if you don't have it, I should say. And that was from the Mayo Clinic. In conclusion, I'd like to say, men, America has changed. Times have changed. We have to change. We got to get with the times. There's education out there. There's resources out there in regards to combat this disease, hypertension. We have wives, we have children, we have grandchildren. Men, we owe it to them to take the best care of ourselves and be here as long as possible. We owe it to ourselves and our body. We've been making great things happen in this country since the beginning of and its foundation of this country. Why stop now? Let's make great things happen with our own health. Thank you for listening.